Kenny from the Call Up Podcast here, bringing you another unique person here from the NYC area that I love to get to know. Is Sir Wilkins. He is 1/3 of the Jobbeteers podcast. He's also training to be a future WWE or AEW superstar. And today he is my guest to talk a little bit of wrestling and to get to know him a little bit more. Mr. Sir Wilkins, how the hell are you, sir?
What's good? What's good, man? Thank you for having me on, man. I appreciate it. Let's talk wrestling. Let's talk life. Let's talk booty cheeks if we have to. I don't know. Let's talk.
We could talk anything you want, brother. So you know what? I love your energy. That's one of the things that drew me to you. Like when I listened to the Jobbeteers podcast, like you guys don't hold anything back at all when it comes to like how you feel on any topic, whether it's Bret Hart's mic skills or the way Vince McMahon is running WWE, or how Tony Khan is like a character in AEW. Like you guys don't hold anything back.
Yeah, man. We try to stay authentic to ourselves. This is literally who we are. My brother, Mr. Black, and Janelle from the HR. So that's literally who we are, and that's what you got, what you get.
So where did your love for wrestling come from?
So I've been watching wrestling for years. I started watching wrestling like most people, super young, like 5 years old, maybe even younger than that. I used to watch with my dad a lot of times and watch reruns of Saturday of the Saturday recordings on WWF. We used to watch it together. That was like the only thing me and my dad ever did together before he passed away.
Okay.
That was like the only time that we had like a time together. So I was always a huge fan of wrestling. My fandom, I think, came like most people, Attitude Era. So I knew all the superstar era people like Razor Ramon. I was a huge 1, 2, 3 Kid fan because his name was 1, 2, 3 Kid and he was a kid and I was a kid. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like he's like me. He's like a young kid, but not knowing that the dude is like almost a grown ass man. And but it was Attitude that really like brought me in because I'm a little bit older, so I have a better understanding of what's going on. So like, still not older, but I'm like, you know, preteens, like before hitting the teens type of age, and that time was awesome for me. Like it was in your face. I mean, a lot of stuff was uncomfortable to watch because I'm like 8, 9 years old watching Attitude Era at its peak. 10, 11, then you know you get a little bit like 10, 11. You're like, yo, I shouldn't be watching this with my mom in the room. There's mad titties and ass all over the place.
I'm talking about puppies and shit.
Yeah, it was fun times, and that was like when I was like really, really into it. College, I kind of fell off a little bit during the Ruthless Aggression era, but then I got right back into it. And I think the podcast and the viewing parties have really kept me locked into the culture. There's been a couple of years over the past like 10, 15 years where you're like, yo, this is really bad shit.
Oh, yeah.
Like a good, like consistent, like bad stuff. But you know, I've always been locked in, and like I said, maybe those 2 years, I wasn't really into it, but I always came back.
Do you feel like now with the era that we're in, like say with like WWE wise, is it getting to that point where you kind of just sit there and say to yourself like, oh man, this is some really like horrible shit that I'm watching right now? Because you get so many reports now with people saying like Monday Night Raw is like so hard to watch that a lot of the times they just kind of just skip it. Yeah,
I mean, I've always found something good to watch on Monday Night Raw. Like I'll find a segment that I thoroughly enjoy, and I'm like, yo, this is good. Does Monday Night Raw suck? Yes. Let's just keep it a buck. They've been following the same formula for like the past whatever years they've been on TV. And I remember I do this like a little experiment. I had my homegirl Santana Red on my mini show called Coffee Talk with Friends. But we did a different way of looking at it. She hasn't watched wrestling in like 15 years, 12 years. And I made her watch it. I was like, yo, watch it. Tell me what you think. And then I'll interview about it. And she was like, yo, it was very familiar. That's an issue. And also a good thing. She felt super familiar about it. She's like, oh, the same thing that they usually do before, they still do it now. And that's the problem with Raw, where it doesn't feel fresh. They have fresh superstars, they have fresh new moves that people are doing nowadays, but it still doesn't feel fresh because of the way that they line up things. Because I think in their head, like, if it's not broken, why fix it? Because they still do over 1.5 million fans. They're still getting paid crazy bread by USA. So in their head, they feel like that is fine. But I'm maybe be skipping over questions right now with the rise of AEW. AEW is in the independent scene on steroids. Let's just keep it a whole buck. Is it bad? No, far from bad. But it's not the same thing as WWE. But with the transition of talent going to AEW and people going, yo, these guys over here, let me go check it out. It has WWE thinking things differently now, slowly. Like I mentioned on an episode of Coffee Talk, where New Day versus the Blood, we got that. That's something we've been talking about. That's something fresh. And New Day and the Usos can go in the ring with each other.
Oh yeah.
I need to sprinkle fucking Roman Reigns on that. It's something slightly fresh, and it's gonna get eyes on it. But to go back to your question, it is a little stale for Raw. Raw does have the little stale feel. Like Raw starts out generic all the time. Somebody comes out, they talk promo. They cut a promo. They go, oh, blah, blah, blah. I had a bad week last week, this and that. Then then the match happens. Then they have a segment. And then we're at a point, and us fans are a lot smarter than we were before. We can actually tell you what the whole show is, the segments are going to be, before we even watch it.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I think it has gotten a little stale. But I think now with AEW being around, they're trying to all right, cool, we got to change some stuff up a little bit.
So now you said that like AEW is like the indies on steroids, right? And AEW is starting to pick up a lot of steam. They're starting to get a lot of eyes. It was the same way like with like say like WCW and even with WWE back in the Attitude Era. Like, do you feel that like AEW will change in time to fit like more of a different demographic? Like right now they're like 18-35 range, where now maybe they might try to focus on say like the lower end and get more of the kid friendly.
I don't think they will anytime soon, because you got to think about it. This once again, this is my opinion. 18-35, that's the people who have jobs. That's the people with money. And that 18-35, and I'm not even 18, but more like 25-35. Like you're out of college, you might be in your first career gig, and they have a good 10 years with that. You know what I mean? And 25-35, they start having kids. They're gonna bring their kids to the show. Just think about it, because John Cena said something. I'll always remember that. He transitioned to like Superman John Cena-ish, Hulk Hogan type John Cena-ish, because he felt that he saw more kids in the crowd. But those kids are the teenagers and people in their early 20s who are fans of the Attitude Era.
Yep.
So they grew with the sport. So I don't think it's going to happen right away. I think it might be a slight adjustment, but I think it'll be another 10 years before that happens. Because if I'm having a kid at 33, my kid's going to kind of be able to go to AEW show at like 5. You know what I mean? For another 5 years, it's gonna be a process. They will slowly change some stuff up. They have to, as if they want to grow as a company and get more advertising dollars. So I think they will be changed, but I don't think anytime soon that will happen.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense, because the way I see them transitioning, I'm just like eventually they'll get to that point where they have to say like, okay, we're like a traded company. We're trying to get more sponsors. We're trying to get more kid friendly, especially now that they're doing AEW Dark tapings in Orlando over at Universal, like where it's predominantly just family friendly place now. So now you're going to get like all these more wrestling fans going in there, and then you probably like have those families that trickle in and say like, oh, let me check this out because it's too hot to stand online to wait for like Transformers.
Yeah. That's what Impact did, but Impact didn't do a good job with that.
Yeah. So I wanted to touch bases. I know you said you're a big wrestling fan, and one of the things I found out about you is that you are training currently
Yeah.
to be a professional wrestler. So how is that going, and what made you want to transition from, being the fan part to now being the entertainer?
I've always wanted to do it, and it's been something like I always wanted to like wrestle in front of a crowd, be on the top rope, do like a semi cool move because I'm still afraid of heights. But one of the biggest things was the podcast, and I started doing the podcast, and I was just like, "Yo, I'm doing this podcast. I want to get into wrestling because I want to feel what these wrestlers are feeling. If I'm doing this podcast and really dive into it, I want to understand what these wrestlers are going through in the ring and have a better understanding of it." So my school, which is House of Glory, great school, recommend it for anybody. The head trainer is Amazing Red, legend in the business.
Amazing guy. If you guys don't know about Amazing Red, like, please Google, YouTube him. Shit, go to my page. I probably have like a million posts about him on there as well.
Yeah. He's the godfather of modern day wrestling. He hates to admit it sometimes. But one of the things I was like, yo, they have an open house. Let me go. So I went and I just got hooked on it, even though it's a fitness part of it, because I have to learn a new craft, learn how to maneuver certain things. And, and I understand the psychology behind wrestling more and how this is bigger than what I thought it was. This isn't just putting some moves together and, we call it a day. It's a lot more little itty bitty details that goes into wrestling. And when you hear like great in-ring people like Bret Hart, he's horrible on the mic, but his in-ring ability, you understand why he does certain things, and you understand why he called himself the best, because little things he would do in the ring help put people over. We got to give him props. He had a drunk ass, high as a motherfucker, British bulldog in the ring with him, and he still put on a quality match with him because he's just a fucking ring general.
And you would have never known that until he said it.
Yeah, high as a kite, high, and probably drunk too. High.
Yeah. So to put on a 5-star match like that back then, and making sure that not only him and or Davey got hurt was amazing to me.
Exactly. So it's things that he would do with the crowd, like how do you get the crowd involved? How do you do certain things? And that's the beauty about wrestling. The moves are great. It's the other stuff that's amazing. Like, for instance, I remember watching, it's funny, I'm mentioning Bret Hart again, Broken Skull Sessions with Bret Hart. And they showed the match where Owen low-key, not low-key, but broke Stone Cold's neck.
Yeah. And
there's a part where it went wrong. It was after the pile driver. Stone Cold can't feel his hands and his legs. I think it was his legs. Yeah. And Owen sees there's an issue and he starts walking around the ring to mock the crowd. So he's getting heat from the crowd, but at the same time, he's doing it to give Stone Cold some more time. And stuff like that is beautiful. And that's what makes these guys so amazing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you're an actor, you're a performer, you're a stunt double, you're like all these things. And for that, you know what I mean? Yeah.
So but it's so true. So you learn so much, when you start training for like this type of business, and then the way you are, that you're so charismatic and so you're very passionate when people listen to the podcast about a lot of the things that you talk about. That you can definitely, I can see that you will use that in your in-ring.
Yeah, I try. You know what's funny? My coach, one of the other coaches there, he's just like, "Yo, I saw your podcast the other day. Yo, I want that Wilkins here. And I was like, nah, that Wilkins doesn't come out yet. I have to learn the basics here first and get really comfortable what I'm doing here in the ring before I bring that other side here. You know what I mean? But I do bring a little bit slowly. I'm trying to bring that over here because I never want to come off too cocky and something I don't even know yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let me talk my shit and know what I'm doing. Like I you know what I mean? Kobe didn't talk shit without knowing what he was doing.
That's true. So you touched on the podcast. So you and you're 1/3 of the Jobbeteers. Can you shed some light as to like who started this, and like, are you amazed with the fan base that you guys have grown so far?
So it's funny how the universe works and how this shit happens. So I was part of this other Facebook group, and this was the time I was doing the viewing parties. That Facebook group came aboard. It was like, hey, we want to be partners on your viewing parties. For people who are listening or watching this, I do pay-per-view viewing parties for WWE and AEW. I've been doing it for the past 10 years. So doing the viewing parties, I've become like one of the admins of the group, and I spoke to him. I was like, yo, if you want this group to be more of a brand, we need to put out content. And the owner of the group was just like, yo, yeah, maybe not. So I had done a podcast with my homeboys from Eye Pokes and Head Shows. They asked me to come on. And I had a fucking phenomenal time. I was talking about wrestling for about an hour and a half and some MMA stuff. So no big deal. My boy who used to be Jobbeteer's old camera guy, I told him to come. And I had said, like, hey, I can't really pay you that much money, but I got you with lunch if you come and take pictures and videos of me doing this podcast. He was like, yeah, I got you. So after we left doing Eye Pokes and Head Shows, we're having dinner, and he tells me, he's like, yo, you should do a podcast. I said, absolutely not. I was like, I don't have the fucking time to do that shit. Where am I gonna find the time to do the podcast? I don't have the equipment to do that shit. And this is before like it was so easy to do a podcast now. Like you could buy a mic, just plug it into like your phone, and you're doing a podcast.
Exactly.
This is like 4 years ago, maybe even 5. And I was like, nah. But at the time, I was listening to a lot of podcasts. I was listening to Rosenberg's podcast, Sam Roberts. I'm a Joe Budden's head from like with Rory and Maul. Like before they got the Spotify deal. I was listening to Brilliant Idiots, and I go again and do Eye Pokes and Head Chokes again. I had another phenomenal time. And my old camera guy name is Leo. Leo was like, yo, let's do a podcast. So I'm watching an old clip of First Take at the gym, and it hits me. I was like, yo, I've never seen a debate show for wrestling. So I hit up my old business partner who had to run the wrestling group. I was like, yo, let's do a debate show about wrestling. Let's get a female on there. Boom, boom, boom. So at the time, I was looking for a female. I had put on my Facebook, I'm looking for a female who's into wrestling to be part of a podcast. I didn't want Janelle to do it, but Janelle's my best friend, but Janelle's always busy. So I didn't think she would be down to do it. So then our mutual friend tags her, was like, yo, what about Janelle? So then I hit her up. She was like, I've been waiting for you to ask me.
She was just waiting in the wings, like.
Yeah, like. So it's me, homeboy from the Facebook group, and Janelle. We do the podcast. Changes the whole concept up. He's the moderator, and she's debating. I didn't want that shit, but I was like, all right, whatever. And we're doing it, and we have creative differences, so we go our separate ways. But once again, I tell you, the universe works in mysterious ways. There was one episode he couldn't make it because he went on vacation, and I told my brother to come on. So we moved Janelle to the moderator seat, and me and my brother and I are debating, and it was instant chemistry between all three of us. It just fucking worked.
Right.
So when me and homeboy split, I hit up my brother, like, you want to do a podcast? And I already had the camera guy, and which is Leo, so we were set. And I already knew what the equipment was. I already knew how to put stuff online, because the first podcast I was doing was like training camp.
Mm-hmm.
So we started doing it, and I knew we had something because there wasn't too many black podcasts out there.
Right.
Like, there's a black guy on the podcast, but it's not a whole podcast. It's just black or Latino or Afro Latino.
Mm-hmm.
Because Janelle is Cuban. So we're doing it, and we had to come up with a name. So we sat at Legends for like an hour and a half. I kid you not. We're like Googling names left and right. Gorilla Position, Table Podcast. Dude, all these fucking names we're Googling. And every one of them is taken. Like any good wrestling podcast name.
Right.
So we finally come up with Tiers, because we have an old friend that used to be like, he used to troll on different sports groups.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm collecting Giant Tiers. I'm collecting Eagle Tiers right now because they just lost the game, whatever.
That's smart.
And he's like, and then she was like, maybe a cup of tears. And then we came up with Jobber.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, yo, we're all technically jobbers here. We're complaining about wrestling, so
right.
Jobber Tears. And the reason why our logo is a cup, because it's filled with tears overflowing, because we're complaining so much.
Okay.
So then we had that, and I thought of us as like underground rappers.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched how, in my weird way, how the music business puts out music and how they promote like music. And I was like, podcast is very similar. So instead of us launching right away, I was like, yo, we're going to do a 2 months, and we're just going to put up different pictures about what we're doing. We're going to talk on Instagram a little bit, and then we're going to basically do a rollout.
Okay.
And then we'll start in January. So we started in January, and about 3 years, we're almost on to 3 years, and we've been running ever since. And to answer your question about the fan base, sometimes I don't think we have a fan base. I'll be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
But then people will stop us on the street like, yo, I fucks with what you're doing, man. I fucks with what you're doing. So a part of me is like, I kind of expected it because we worked so hard. But another part of me is like, I didn't expect it to be where it's at right now.
Right.
But whatever it is, I fucking am grateful for whatever fans that we have and people who fuck with it, who listen to the podcast for how many years, who join us on a live, who come to the viewing parties, who buy a fucking t-shirt from us. And you know what I mean? It's, even if we only had one fan, it's still more than zero. You know what I mean?
Yeah, basically.
You know how it is. You're trying to build something, and then other people fuck with what you're building.
Mm-hmm. You get that all the time.
Yeah, so I fucking love it. I'm just grateful that we have people that listen to what we do, and over the years the numbers have gone up on our YouTube and also our SoundCloud and everything. Numbers have we're seeing the progress. Like we just officially got monetized on YouTube. Thank God. That shit takes fucking forever.
Oh, listen, I know the struggle of that one because I put a lot of the interviews up on YouTube. So to like get monetized and do all this stuff is a pain in the ass. Bro,
it's a pain in the fucking ass.
But you touched based on doing like the viewing parties, like for pay-per-views and stuff like that. And you guys do it at Legends here in New York, right? I haven't been. I need to go there and check it out for myself. But the response that I get from a lot of people who've been to these been to these viewing parties is that it's very family oriented. You guys you guys go around and say hi to everyone. It's like everybody knows everybody that's there because you get familiar faces that come back all the time. Like how excited does it get? Like do you get like every single time you have to do one of these parties? I mean, obviously I know it's probably stressful at times because you got to put it together. But like once you're there, like what is the vibe for you once you start seeing everybody come in?
So in the beginning, so I used to promote like parties, like nightclub parties. So I'm a little bit used to it, like,
Mm-hmm.
promoting something, putting it together and everything of that nature. But it's still a little bit of stress, but I love seeing how everybody gets so fucking excited for it. How, for instance, we had AEW All Out, and the pop for Cole and Danielson was absolutely amazing. Like the video somebody took was so crazy that Bleacher Report reposted it. So it's just like, yo, wrestling fans are fucking amazing when they're being fans and not being weirdos.
There's a lot of weirdos.
Yeah, and it's beautiful because everybody's coming together just to watch some wrestling. And you kind of get a little bit of taste of who's over and who's not because of the pop that we have. And I'm going to tell you this right now, for the bigger ones that we do, when you're there, you feel like you're at a live show. But you can hear the commentary. That's how popping it gets. Like, All Out was a prime example because that was like our second big event since things opened back up, like bars and everything opened back up. So we had WrestleMania, and this was and SummerSlam. I'm sorry, SummerSlam as well. So it's like our third one, and they all have this live action type of feel because so many people are just jumping for joy, and the food is pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been great, man.
So you guys transitioned from podcasts to party hosts, and recently, a couple of months ago, I had the honor of going to a wrestling event because I have not been to wrestling events in God knows how long because of the pandemic. And you guys put on Jobber Slam, which was my first wrestling show back since the pandemic. Okay, and it was a great show from beginning to end. Are we gonna see a Jobber Slam too?
We're hoping so, if God willing, and a pandemic doesn't shut things down. It's funny how we have to say that nowadays. Like tomorrow's is definitely not promised anymore. So we will do something of that nature. And once again, Jobber Slam came about with things lining up. One of our first guests was Joaquin Morales, and he had just started owning Battle Club Pro. I think he was like maybe 6 months in, maybe to a year in. And we were doing the show. He came to us because our brand had gotten bigger, and he was just like, yo, and he's like, yo, would you guys be interested in doing a show with me? Like you are the co-headliners and co-promoters of the show. It was supposed to happen 2020, but the world shut down. The world has shut down, and we couldn't make it happen.
Okay.
So it came about last year, and I can't take too much credit for it because the person that should take the most credit was Janelle. Janelle is busted her ass of doing a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff was done last minute. We literally had 3 weeks to put the show together. And we were kind of in shock that 300 people showed up. Like, the outpouring and the support for Jobber Slam was absolutely amazing. You were there.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was ringside for this event, and it was like one of the best independent shows I've seen so far, next to like Evolve, where they used to have it over at La Boom.
Yeah.
You guys, were well organized. You guys had everything safety-wise in place. And then even though we had to have these restrictions, like it was still a party vibe. Like you guys had to kick people out because nobody wanted to leave.
Yeah. Because my whole thing is the things that we do, we want to feel like you belong here.
Right.
Because the wrestling community sometimes gets cliquey. And I hate that shit. We may not agree on shit. We may not agree who our favorite wrestler is. We may not agree on who our fucking favorite promotion is. But at the end of the day, we all like wrestling.
That's true.
Let's watch this shit together. You can talk our shit about it, but at the end of the day, we all like wrestling. Let's just come together, show each other love, be respectful, and have a good time. Because this is, for many of us, and you even talked about it in pre-production, this is our getaway from the bullshit in the world. Let's think about it. Wrestling was the only thing that was really on during the pandemic.
Everything else was shut down.
Yeah. That was the only consistent thing that I was able to do. Like, we were able to do the podcast every week through StreamYard and have something to talk about. I remember watching Undisputed, and Skip said something that it hit me. He was like, we were doing this show, and we didn't know if we were going to have a job next week because all sports were gone. That's how crazy it was, but wrestling wasn't gone. Wrestling was still going. Shout out to Vince McMahon putting the money bag on the table for Trump and said, let's get this shit going.
Exactly.
But, man, the show came out great. We fucking loved it, and we're hopefully, God willing, be able to do something else next year as well, and do other stuff in other states as well.
So I have 2 rapid fire questions that I want to ask you before I let you go. We know that you're very passionate about wrestling, so I want to get your take on this. Who has better mic skills, MJF or The Miz?
The Miz, 100% The Miz. Let's put it out on the table. Let's talk about this real quick. MJF is fire on the mic. Let's not deny this. But we've only seen a heel MJF. I'm going to tell you this right now. It is harder to be a babyface in the current climate of professional wrestling. There have been times where Miz has been a babyface and cut babyface promos, and they were good. Miz doesn't have to yell to get his point across. I do. MJF has to. But Miz has evolved where his cadence could lower and still gets his point across. Miz is better, hands down. MJF is going to be up there one day, but he's not there right now. Great question. I'm about to put that on Twitter.
There you go. Who will win in a match, Sammy Guevara or Montez Ford?
Montez Ford. He's an ex-Marine.
Just because he's an ex-Marine.
I think he's either ex-Marine or some type of. He's been in some type of in the armed forces. He did something. So he's fucking up Sammy.
Oh man, Wilkins, thank you so much for coming on and talking some wrestling. For the people who don't know and they're kind of curious, where can they find you?
You can find me all over social media. It's the same thing across the board, SIR_Wilkins. I am also 1/3 of the Jobbeteers podcast. So you just type in Jobbeteers on all forms of social media and we will pop up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to this episode and watching this episode. I appreciate it. Homie, thank you for having me on, man.
No problem. Thank you.
This is an honor.